The Citizen Mike Show. News. Commentary. Interviews. Citizen Mike Show starts now.
Welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Burdinsky, and on my right, the editor of the Record Journal, Ralph Tomaselli. Ralph, we were, of course, off for 2 weeks.
Yes.
So I could take a trip with National Geographic. It was a tour of what they call the Holy Lands. It was Israel and the West Bank, the Palestine area. And I brought back some photos, and you're required, as a good co-host, you're absolutely required to take a look. Okay. I took hundreds, but we winnowed it down to just a few. Let's hit the first one and give you a little flavor as to what we were doing. You may recognize that.
I do.
That's the Dome of the Rock. That's one of the holiest sites in all of Islam. On May 15th, beginning of Ramadan, there'll be hundreds of thousands of people packed into this place, this courtyard, for prayer and to hear sermons and such. But it's such a famous thing. I thought I'd start out with that. And right across the courtyard is an extremely important site in Islam. It's a mosque, a very famous Al-Aqsa Mosque, very historic. And on these grounds is the spot where, according to tradition, Abraham was going to sacrifice his son to show his faith, right? And now this is a street version. This is a Citizen Mike version. It's not this is really a sort of an informal. And according to tradition, God intervened, said, "Don't kill your son. I'm not interested in human sacrifice anymore. Those days have gone." And they had this conversation, resulting in a covenant. And we've all heard of the covenant. Right there at that site, it's right there. I mean, we walked. The rock is still there, and they had this covenant. According to tradition, God promised Abraham that his descendants would inherit, let's say, or own or occupy all of Palestine, which led to the troubles for today, because that led to religious Zionists and a lot of conflict with the Palestinians. But that's where it all happened. That's the beginning of it all. Yeah.
Now is that Jerusalem?
Yeah, that's.
And is this
that's
mosque?
Jerusalem.
Isn't the reason I know this mosque? One of the reasons I know this mosque, isn't it tied to the some of the protests against recognizing Jerusalem?
Well, there's always been a battle under whose jurisdiction this real estate should be.
Right.
And now they have sort of a peaceful coexistence.
Good.
I think for now it's all worked out. The next visual we have, the next thing we have to show you is a video.
Okay.
And what the video shows is our group, first of all, the National Geographic group, and the guide who is translating for an imam. And the imam is a cleric in charge of who preaches to and gives sermons on these grounds. He's like a top guy in Islam to hold such a prestigious spot. He's a fiery fellow, didn't have much good to say about the United States, but again, his flock are the very religious Muslims that travel sometimes hundreds, if not thousands, of miles to come to this site, especially during Ramadan. You'll see our guide in just a second. This is the Palestinian guide. We had two guides. One was a Palestinian, one was an Israeli guide. They had competing narratives. The Palestinian guide was there to give the Palestinian view of things. The Palestinian guide had true bona fides. He fought against the Israelis. He was arrested. He was tortured. He was jailed. Now he's in his 40s and he has a family, and he's realized he wants to make a future, so he's got a gig with National Geographic, and he works for nonprofits and traveling to and from Chicago. But all his life, he's lived in, with, and for the Palestinian cause. A great guide. In other slides, you may see the Israeli guide. There's a story behind him, too. But let's get to this short video, which shows this same area, the Dome of the Rock area.
We object one thing. Those who want to come and take the place under the power of anyone coming to visit the mosque.
The purpose of the video was not to hear what he was saying, because he went on for about 20 minutes, and he gave the Palestinian view of things, but to give you an idea of the real estate. So that's where we are. The third one, I believe, is going to be the Wailing Wall, which is the famous west wall of that. There was like a foundational wall for the temple, the Jewish temple of antiquity times. And you've probably seen a lot of videos of that. It's a very holy site in the Jewish religion, as you will see. I think this is the third one, Bruce. Let's hit that. 3, 2, 1, go. Didn't need more. I mean, it sort of went on. Let's get to the next one, number 4, Bruce, and we'll see what that is. Recognize it? The Jordan
River.
Yeah, and I think there might be a longer one. I thought I actually had a longer one. Bruce, can you play that again? We're having trouble getting that back. Okay. A couple of takeaways there. There's obviously some people in the River Jordan, in the Jordan River, the faithful, getting the experience. There's a group on the far left dressed in white. They were doing individual baptisms. As you can see, the river is not that wide. It's very, very muddy on the far bank. That was Jordan. Wow. That was Jordan, and people on the Jordanian side were watching people on the Israeli side, and people on the Israeli side were watching people on the Jordanian side. It's a spot where you can see a lot of emotions. There was one lady who was obviously paralyzed from the waist down. Her husband, and she was she was not light. She was not a slight build. She had a loved one, I assumed it was a husband, but a loved one carried her from a wheelchair from the stairs down in the water, dipped her in, and brought her back to the wheelchair. And so you see a lot of those scenes on that spot, and also it's crowded. A lot of people want to see it. Let's get to the next one, Bruce, whatever that is. That's back to the Wailing Wall. I guess I got these out of order. And again, this was a foundation wall, and on top of the foundation were grounds, and on top of the grounds was the temple. And there were two. The last one destroyed by the Romans shortly after the death of Christ. Let's move on. And the guy with the hat, he's the Israeli guy.
So then, this is the temple that when we read about Jesus Christ.
No,
it is not that temple.
Well, it's the foundation.
Right. But
yeah, okay.
But it's the site of where the Bible describes Christ going into the temple and being upset with the way the temple is being run.
Yes,
okay.
You're right.
And then the Jordan River, is that where I think people know it from John the Baptist and Jesus Christ?
I should have mentioned that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a site, according to tradition, where John the Baptist baptized Jesus. Yeah, I thank you.
No, it's all right. My reading on historical Jesus is paying off here.
Well, this is a little pop quiz for you.
Yes, right. So I'm glad I'm not screwing it up. Go ahead.
Yeah, not yet. What's the next one in order there, Bruce? This is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and you can see the crowds. This is the main entrance to it, and it's an extremely holy site in Christendom because this is built over the place where, according to tradition, Jesus was crucified and died.
Oh, wow.
This is the spot inside those doors where Jesus was on the cross. We went in there, there's some photos, and we walked up there, so we'll see some other photos that lead up to this one. Bruce, let's move on to the next one we have. That's inside. My thumb is in the way. And the reason why my thumb is in the way and on the right part of the photo is because in order to take the photo, I had to lift my cell phone above my head. It was so crowded. I'm a short guy. You wouldn't be able to see anything unless I did that. So I screwed it up, and it blocked it out. But you can still get a sense of what the inside looks like in the crowds. Bruce, let's move on to the next. A little better shot. I found a step to get on. I held the cell phone above my head and into the sort of the main body of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Again, the crowds, a mixed multitude all over the planet. People come. A lot of different tongues, a lot of little ceremonies going on, a lot of incense, that you breathe in. What's the next shot, Bruce? This is an excavation, and it's called the City of David. And below the old temple walls, below the Wailing Wall, below the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but you can see the dome of that in the middle of the photo on the upper part, is an excavation they've been working on for many years now. It's where King David, had his palace. A lot of excavations on this trip. We're only going to show you, 2 or 3. But it's pretty impressive, and they're working on it. And like all excavations, there's rooms and mosaics and walls and all kinds. Just a fascinating spot, right next to where the site of the old temples. Bruce, move on. Changing gears. Maybe you've heard of the Palestinian city of Ramallah.
I have.
That's it. This is from the bus window.
Okay.
Now, until I got to Ramallah, I thought Ramallah was going to be a broken down, depressing, old, impoverished, dirty city. Maybe that's the prejudice on my part. Ramallah is loaded with new construction, new buildings, new apartments on these hillsides. There's not much trees and agriculture there because it's sort of hardscrabble. But Ramallah is it seemed to me to be a vibrant, successful, clean, tidy town. We didn't feel threatened at all. I was just impressed with all the new construction that was going on there. So it sort of burst one of my unwarranted preconceptions as to what a Palestinian city, the biggest Palestinian city in the Holy Lands, looks like. That's Ramallah. Okay, let's move on there. This is kind of no, it's not out of order. After Ramallah, we went through a refugee camp. That's it. That's one of them. Now, before I went to the Holy Lands in Israel, I thought, in the West Bank, I thought, a refugee camp is tents. It's a camp, right?
Right. It's
tents, and it's apartments. At least this one was, and I think most of them are like this. They're kind of run down. They don't have the best services. But this is a refugee camp, and that's our group walking through one of the narrow streets. The refugee camp is part of a Palestinian town. We didn't feel unsafe in any way. Maybe when tensions were rising at other times, maybe we wouldn't have gone in there. But we were in good hands with our Palestinian guides who seemed to know everybody,
right.
And he could talk every language that he needed to talk to explain to whoever needed an explanation. Obviously we were tourists, coming in. Let's go to the next one, Bruce. Yeah, those are martyrs on the wall, painted on the wall with a little of their story. Palestinian martyrs who died for their cause. And they're on the wall, and it's, I guess, from my Western perspective, their form of hero worship. These are their heroes. Bruce, the next one. This is a church in Bethlehem that is built over the site where Jesus was born. Right. A very holy site in Christendom. We had to wait in line for 45 minutes. Part of the church was under construction. Again, you see groups from all parts of the world, different languages, tour guides, things like that. But I want to, again, give you a flavor as to what that looked like in Bethlehem. Bruce, the next one. Let's stop there. Do you know what that is?
I do not know what that is.
That is where, according to tradition, Jesus was born. That is
Wow.
actually a cave. It's hard to recognize it as a cave because of the religious trappings surrounding it.
Yeah.
And you had to wait 45 minutes in line to get a peek at it. And when you get a peek at it, there's other people trying to get a
Right.
peek at it. And church officials are saying, okay, move along, you know, watch your step,
Wow.
move along. But that, according to tradition, is the cave where Jesus was born. And Constantine, in about 400 or 500 A.D., when he
Right.
converted to Catholicism
Right.
or Christianity, I guess, had this church built over that site. So, Bruce, the next one. This is in Nazareth. When visited a lot of the cities there, and this is the Church of the Annunciation. Now, you know what that is, but I'm going to tell you, just in case you don't remember your Sunday school stories. This is the location where an angel, I believe Gabriel, according to tradition, came down and annunciate, told Mary and her family, I believe, I'm not sure this, Joseph was there. Mary was a young girl, we believe, 12, 13, 14 years old, told Mary that she was pregnant.
Wow.
Right there. And the church was built over the spot. I'm not sure I've included in this collection the spot where it happened. It was another cave.
Oh,
and the same sort of thing. You got to wait in line, and you want to take a picture,
Right.
but there's other people crowded around. I don't know what the next picture is. Let's see, Bruce, if we got that. No, so we're away from the Church of the Annunciation,
Yeah.
and now we're far off in the Badlands of Israel, and this is a butte or a bluff where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. On the upper left quadrant, on that sheer wall, that limestone wall, you see a hole in the rock.
Okay.
Right? It's a dark
Yep.
area. I didn't draw an arrow this time, but the upper left quadrant.
See it?
And above that hole, there's sort of a dishing effect and another hole.
Uh-huh.
And that hole, both those holes lead to a cave, and I believe in the 1940s, I didn't make this in my notes. It is true that a Bedouin shepherd, I don't know how he got his goats up there, but he got his goats up there, and we were told that in order to control your goats, you would throw a stone to turn the goats to the direction you'd want. You just throw a stone, and the goats would shy away.
Right.
So the shepherd, and the holes were much smaller when this Bedouin shepherd, I believe in the 1940s, was up there minding his flock. He threw a stone, and instead of the stone bouncing off the hardscrabble, it went into a cave and heard a crack. And those are the Dead Sea Scrolls, and
Wow.
after that, history speaks for itself. And the scrolls, of course, recorded the doings or the thoughts or the prayers of the Essene sect, which was an extremely conservative, reclusive sect of the Jewish religion back in the days of Christ, the time of Christ.
Wow.
So it had the Essene perspective of life. Bruce, the next one. So this is an old, in Jericho.
Uh-huh.
It's a Roman excavation built by Herod. Herod is the Roman vassal king. He was sort of a franchise king, but
Right.
very powerful. And Herod is a very talented guy. He built ports and castles and forts. He's a great builder. And he built this structure they're excavating now on a hilltop in Jericho. We saw a lot of those excavations, but you see one excavation, I guess, on a photo, then you've seen,
Right.
maybe you've seen them all. I don't know. We may have another shot at it. Bruce, let's take the next one. That is the American Embassy in Tel Aviv.
Oh.
That is moving this week
Okay.
to Jerusalem.
Jerusalem.
And causing consternation among many in Israel. The political right in Israel likes the idea, but sort of the moderates and liberals are nervous. They don't see an advantage that makes potentially the town of Jerusalem the scene of protests and things like that. But that gets into foreign policy, which is another play for another day. But I was so struck by I don't know, I've heard so much about it, and this is it, the American Embassy in Tel Aviv. What else we got, Bruce? What's the next one? We're all done. Okay.
Wow.
So there you go.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, one other quick story, and I came across this in the, I think it must have been the Hartford Courant, and it's very recent. In the headline, reads, Israel military troops kill 3 who tried border breach. And this is out of the Gaza Strip, which we did not go to. We went to the Golan Heights, we went to the West Bank, we went to some other spots. But we were told that what's being reported in Israel right now is a planned mass demonstration, a potential charging of the border by Gazans, charging of the Israeli border, which of course is a suicide mission. If that actually comes off, the Gazans that charge the border will be gunned down. It's a free fire zone over there. It hasn't got as much play over here. But there's concern in Israel that could spark sympathy protest or sympathy violence. Now, I told you about the competing narratives.
Right.
You know, the Israeli guy and the Palestinian guy. They
Sure.
both agreed on this point. And at the risk of wading into controversial matters of foreign policy and domestic politics,
Well,
but so what?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is why I went. This is why that that trip is so valuable. So both of the guides agreed that the Israeli troops, the Israeli government has unilaterally declared on the Gazan side of the fence a free fire zone. I don't know the number of feet, but if I say like 300 feet, I'm probably not far off. That if any Palestinian on their side of the fence wanders within 300 feet, or if that's the right amount, on their side of the fence, the Israeli troops have the right to open fire, shoot to kill.
Okay.
Both of them thought that was a war crime, that demonstrating on your side of the border and being gunned down for demonstrating was not the right thing to do. When it gets filtered into the U.S. papers, it's, well, we're protecting the borders. But there's an open question as to whether it is really that. So for the last month or more, there have been serious demonstrations in Gaza on the other side of the fence. There have been demonstrations. And yeah, maybe there's rock throwing and all that, but they're not armed, you know, to the extent that the Israeli army is. And it's probably every Friday, is not well reported. Several Gazans get killed and probably dozens, if not hundreds, get wounded. But that's going to be nothing compared to this May 15, first day of Ramadan, planned demonstration or charging of the border, when we were led to believe that potentially tens of thousands, or thousands at least, will be charging the border, and who knows what's going to happen. So mark your calendar.
May 15th.
May 15, and we'll see what's going on. But this headline with Netanyahu on the front of the Hartford Courant just reminded me to bring it up.
Right.
One last thing.
Go ahead.
One last thing, and then we'll get to local politics. The West Bank is divided into security zones. An Israeli-controlled security zone, a Palestinian Authority-controlled security zone, and another one that is sort of a mix and match and sort of a no man's land. Our Palestinian guide almost every day had to get off the bus and get dropped off on the highway because he was not permitted as a Palestinian to stay with our group and travel into the wrong security zone.
Right.
And we would see him at dinner. He'd get off the bus at 3 o'clock, and Hussein, where it's a checkpoint up there. I can't get through that checkpoint.
Right.
He would have to get off the bus. We would see him at dinner. How'd you get here? He says, I can't tell you. I went back to Jerusalem. This is a long story. And he'd be with us on the bus the next day. And then the next day, typically we were there for 10 days. You'd have to jump off the bus before the checkpoint, or else he could be arrested and put in jail.
Wow.
And I said one more thing, and I'm going to digress one more time. One could make a case that on the West Bank, it's sort of a soft Jim Crow situation, a soft apartheid situation with the Palestinians, and the Israelis absolutely have the upper hand. The Israeli narrative would be it's in the interest of security, and the Palestinian narrative is we want basic civil rights. Right. End of story. Let's talk about local stuff.
Okay.
All right. That too long? How much?
No,
time
no,
do we
we're
have?
good. We got plenty of time.
So tell me what's going on with the state of the Wallingford budget.
The state of the Wallingford
Yeah,
budget.
the state of the Wallingford budget. Tell me what's going on. I got to get a drink of water. And
Yeah,
catch
good.
my breath. So
Right, catch your
need
breath.
you to
So I'll
sort of-
try to sum this up.
Yeah. I
Well,
need you to
the
sum it up.
council met Tuesday night,
Yeah.
and I think the expectation was, based on a prior meeting, that they would be amending the mayor's proposed budget and reducing it by about $500,000. And certainly about $411,000 of that got a lot of attention because it was the Board of Education a few weeks prior had gone to the council and said, we don't need this $411,000. And there seemed to be what we thought, at least publicly, agreement by the town council. It seemed like a no-brainer that the council would then reduce the mayor's proposed budget by the amount that the Board of Education that was in essence giving back.
8-1 vote in favor of that.
Thank you.
Reduction.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then on top of that amount, there was $58,000 approximately that was voted on to reduce the budget by, and that was one of those insurance recalculations that sometimes goes on around, you know, in the time between they actually write down a budget and then go to pass it. There may be changes in personnel, there may be adjustments, and that affects the insurance costs. And so it seemed to me that Tuesday night they were going to get together and vote to reduce the budget.
And that $58,657 reduction was an agreed-upon reduction. That was
Absolutely. Right.
unanimously passed.
Unanimously passed. So not even 8-1.
Not even unanimously.
Okay.
Euphemistically, some call it the Shortell reduction because it was
Well,
on the initiative of Chris Shortell.
Right. I
Apparently
have
that
noticed his name has been linked to it. And
yeah, his name was linked to it, so I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but really not. You know.
Okay.
So here we had two votes, 8-1, and the other one's unanimous. Probably 9 to nothing to reduce the budget at least by about $470,000.
Right.
Rounded.
Right.
Rounded. So one might think that the taxpayers would get a little break in this
Right.
amount, $470,000.
Right.
Everybody agreed to it. Now, the one person on that 8-1 vote who wanted the Board of Ed to keep money they didn't want to keep
Right.
was Jason Zandri.
Right.
So Jason Zandri said, even though the Board of Ed doesn't want the 411, they want to give it back, Jason Zandri, want the Board of Ed to keep it. So that was the outlier.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think for those of us who have watched these things for a lot of years, too, there was one other thing that was kind of interesting about this change to the mayor's proposed budget, which is usually, well, no, I don't want to overspeak, but in my memory, most of the time if the council is discussing changing the mayor's budget, I mean, the mayor's budget has almost become like, I don't know, sacrosanct, is that the right word? Something that the mayor is very territorial about his budget. I'm not going to say that the mayor has never agreed to changes to a budget, but he's very sensitive about it, I would say. And in this case, there just didn't seem to be that issue that, oh my God, you know, if we go to change the mayor's budget, the world's going to end. And there was none of that here.
Yeah, the mayor was okay with it.
The mayor was okay with it. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Mike. That was summing it up. The mayor was okay with it.
Yeah. So what happened? What happened, and I'm just going to read the lead story from yesterday's paper. The town council failed to pass an amended budget Tuesday, meaning the mayor's budget proposal is adopted by default under the town charter. The council voted 5-4 against the budget that would have cut $470,000 in spending for Mayor Dixon Jr.'s proposal, including $411,000 from the Board of Ed recently told the council it didn't need. And it goes on to give details. So they, despite this 8-1 vote and the unanimous vote, the following week, just a few days apart, the council couldn't get it done.
Yes.
They couldn't get it done. Taxpayers are paying an extra $470,000 in taxes that they don't really need to spend. Why did this happen?
Well, I guess it depends who you ask.
You.
Okay.
Based on reporting.
Okay. Well,
You know.
right. Good point.
Yeah.
I think I'd break it down. Well, no. Why did it happen? The
Yeah.
5 people who, or at least the 5 counselors who voted against the amended budget, so in essence voted against eliminating the money that the board asked to give back, they're saying today, as we tape this on Wednesday, Mike,
Wednesday, May 9.
Wednesday, May 9 for Thursday, what they're saying is that they rejected this because in a form of protest, that they're frustrated with the entire budget process, and some of them are saying that they wanted no tax increase. So the people that voted for the budget, the people that voted to make the reductions, the 4, they're kind of spinning it as, well, don't they want to reduce the budget? Don't they want to cut people's taxes? And the 5 that voted not to reduce the money, they're spinning it, well, no, this budget didn't go far enough.
So let me recast
Right,
the issue
go ahead,
and see
recast
if it's
it.
a fair recasting,
Go ahead,
a fair
recast
characterization.
it.
So
That's
you
what
have a
happened.
choice. You have a choice. You could pay a little more in taxes or a little less.
Right,
The Democrats primarily,
right.
because all 3 of them, all 3 Democrats said, we would rather pay a little more in taxes, because that was the choice. You're pursing your lips like
Well,
it's
because
not
I
tell me.
can't. Well, maybe I make things too nuanced, and you're cutting through it. That's not. I don't think that's the way they feel about it. But maybe if in black and white facts, that is what.
Well, in black and white facts, there's no denying it. They
Right,
had a choice.
right. Empirically, you're right. I cannot. Right.
They had a choice.
They had a choice.
Pay
Yes,
a little
they
more
did.
in taxes
Yes.
or pay a
So,
little less in
go ahead.
taxes, and the Democrats
Right.
and Fishbein and Letourneau said,
Right.
we vote to pay
Yes.
a little more in taxes.
Accurate.
And they try to wiggle and justify an unjustifiable position by saying we're going to make the taxpayers pay for our protest. What a lame, wimpy, substance-free error that they made. And the Democrats, in my view, will never again have the moral high ground when they talk about saving the taxpayers' money. They had their chance this year, and they did. This year, the Democrats did this year what they accused Craig Fishbein of doing a couple of years ago when Craig Fishbein had the opportunity to vote for a tax increase that was a little less than what the mayor had wanted, and Craig, said no, he's not going to vote for any tax increase. The Democrats accused Craig of voting for higher taxes because Craig wouldn't go along with a compromise, which is a true accusation. Democrats did the exact same thing this year.
Right.
And here's how these votes go. They go alphabetically.
Okay.
All right. So a motion was made to adopt the revised budget, which saves $470,000, and it goes alphabetically. And as the vote goes down, aye, nay, yes, no, and you begin to count, the last guy in line knows where the vote stands.
Right.
Remember, this is a 5-4 vote.
Okay.
The last guy in line is Jason Zandri.
Right.
He could have saved the taxpayers $500,000 or not, and he chose not to.
Right.
In the name of a protest. It's inexplicable, and I talk to me about this.
Well,
I
you seem to have
I'm at
your
a loss
mind
of-
made up,
No,
which I understand.
No, it's not. It's the those are facts.
So-
I
okay.
mean, if I got my facts wrong,
No, those
You
are
know.
the facts. I think that.
but you're more forgiving.
I'm more nuanced, and I'm not as.
I know what nuance means
I'm
in
not
this case.
right, and maybe that's not a good thing. But I think the thing that.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm willing to listen, I guess, is that these are not the first counselors to express frustration about the budget process.
Well, they're the first counselors to make the taxpayers pay for their frustration with $500,000 of tax dollars.
So
That's never happened before.
absolutely. So I think that if I felt
Well, Craig
better
did.
about the process,
Yeah.
maybe I'd be a little less forgiving, and maybe I'm just trying to bring up their point of view.
All right. So what happens next year, the year after, the year after? What's the underlying cause? Is this going to happen again? They can't cobble together, some sort of
Right.
majority because the Democrats will protest. If the Democrats don't get remember, the Democrats didn't put forth an alternative they liked.
Good point.
They didn't do that. They're sort of whining in this
right.
piece that, well, we didn't like the
Right.
alternative.
No, I
They
think,
didn't.
in fact, that's an excellent point.
They didn't push
Right.
a plan
They didn't
they
push
wanted. They let Craig sort of push something.
Okay.
Craig Fishbein, which went down in flames. The Democrats didn't get together, give an alternative narrative, fight for it, argue for it, explain why it's more reasonable than the mayor's. They were just presented with the agreed upon unanimous vote and the 8-to-1 votes, which modified the budget a little bit. They were presented with those, and they changed their minds.
When they could
From
have.
Thursday to Tuesday,
Okay.
they flipped.
Okay.
And you're saying I'm not nuanced.
No, I don't
All
think
right.
so. I don't. I think also that.
Nuance.
I think given.
I'll be more nuanced.
No, I think it's good. I think it's good that I think that
Yeah.
given the set of facts, given the circumstances they found
Yeah.
on Tuesday night, and if those set of circumstances were presented to me, even though I might be frustrated about other things that have gone on, I think the thing to do is to vote to reduce the budget. I do have to agree with that. I think that if you're, especially after the Board of Education comes to you and says, take this money back.
Yeah. Well, what could have happened, I suppose, in a perfect world, I mean, remember the council had from Thursday to Tuesday to think about this, and certainly all the councilors knew that this $470,000 in budget cuts were coming and were going to be presented, and if they, in their minds, felt we've got to say no to a mere $470,000, then I suppose they could defeat that. That motion that reduces the budget by $470,000, but follow up with another motion.
Right.
Say, we didn't want the $470, but here's the Democratic plan, because they all hung together on this. They weren't hanging separately. They,
Right.
They hung together. So instead of 470, we're pushing for 575 or 833,000 cut, and make the pitch.
Okay.
Knowing if they've lost, they've just cost the taxpayers $500,000, but they didn't even do that. Should we change the subject?
Well, no. Well, but just one other. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe stay on the subject,
Yeah,
but also, one other thing that crossed my mind was, what is the role of council leadership to try to get 5 votes to pass this? Because that's what really surprised me when I opened up the story last night. Was, I know the group of 5 here, and it didn't surprise me. And the group of 4,
Testa,
right?
Morgenstein, Zandri, Fishbein, Letourneau were the 5 councilors
Right.
that voted to tax more.
Okay.
In my unnuanced,
Right.
simplistic
No,
explanation.
right. No,
Okay.
they did vote to tax more. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The Republicans,
Okay.
4 Republicans, voted to tax less.
They did.
Okay, so take it away. So
Well, no,
yeah.
I think the way sometimes this should work
Yeah.
is someone in that group of 4, before the meeting, could have certainly reached out to the group of 5 and in some way counted votes, made sure they had enough votes, tried to at least get a 5th vote. That would seem to me to be the role of the council chairman and council vice chair.
Yeah, I agree with you. I guess we don't have complete information as to what efforts they made
Right.
in caucus
A
or
good point.
otherwise.
Right.
And we don't have any information as to how receptive the 3 Democrats would have been. Certainly, Craig Fishbein is of his own mind, and he wasn't going to say yes to anything that involved
Okay,
a tax
right.
increase, no matter how small. That takes one off the
Okay,
table.
right.
So the pivot guy really is John Letourneau. And
Right.
I don't know what the interaction with him was, but you're right. This is a defeat for the council leadership. For Vinnie Cervoni, he was unable to cobble together a majority to pass a budget. And after the budget motion was defeated, there was no attempt to resurrect an alternative compromise budget that would have accommodated the wishes of all 9 councilors.
Right.
Remember that unanimous vote and the 8-1? There was no attempt to put together something on the spot, on the fly, and instead they just abandoned the efforts and it defaulted to the mayor's budget. And as the reporting was, that's 2 years out of 3
Right. And
that happened. I just got one other thought. I think it also is a sign of failure on the mayor's part because the ultimate leader of the town is Mayor Dickinson, and it's a test of his how he handles the council, council relations, how frank and honest he is, to what degree can he earn their trust and respect, or have things deteriorated so much between councilors of both parties that now the mayor's budget is not as respected and his veto and his prestige is not as feared as much. And I sense that's happening too.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I know and I guess that's where I have a lot more empathy towards the 5 is part of this deterioration. And but I wanted to bring up two other points quickly. One, why do we have to have this hard, fast second Tuesday of May?
Charter.
Right, but I mean, shouldn't maybe we think about adjusting the charter? I mean, in practical purposes, does it have to be that hard of a deadline?
I'm a believer in deadlines.
Okay.
Because, and you're a believer in deadlines too. If that story is due, you better turn it in or you won't be working for the Record Journal. Right,
but yet last year, towns extended their budget deadlines because of the situation with the state. In other words, and the world seemed to go on. I'm not saying there shouldn't be no deadline, but I'm not sure.
Well, the council has to learn, the council has to get the executive ability and the executive leadership it needs so that it has the 5 weeks that it can schedule the workshops that it needs and not wait until the last minute or whatever is happening. Now, they try to do that with the night when, this was a Thursday, the night when all motions are made so you know what's coming. And in Vinnie Cervone's defense, he thought any person would reasonably think when there's a unanimous vote and an 8-1 vote on saving $470,000, you have that in the bag.
Okay.
I think, that's, and again, if the rug was pulled out, it was the 3 Democrats primarily that did it throughout the process. There was not an alternative narrative that they pressed for, that maybe, Cervone could have orchestrated some sort of a compromise. He had one plan to work with, $470,000. And Craig Fishbein put his plan forward, but that really never had a chance. I mean, just for a lot of other
Right, and I agree with that, and that's the next point. I mean, did any alternative from these 5 have a chance in the end?
I'm not aware of an alternative.
Right, and really the reality is to have an alternative, don't you really need more than 5?
Yeah. I'm not going to say yes to that. It'd be nice to have 5, but if you have an alternative, if you have 2 effective councilors battling, that can lead to the 3rd, which can lead to the 4th. But you got to start, with at least 2, with an alternative. And let's change the subject.
Okay.
Proposed sand plane project doesn't need Wallingford wetlands permit, and this is the story of Allnecks and the cicadas and the rare bugs and all that kind of stuff. Where do we stand on that? What's your impression? Your sort of bottom line 2-sentence takeaway on this Allnecks sand plane
I
issue?
think the Planning Commission will meet next week.
Yep.
And probably approve it, and I think generally people will be okay with that.
Yeah.
I don't think there'll be a huge protest to that.
Not from people that live in Wallingford. Well, I mean, I could be wrong. When I was away, I read on my iPad the Record Journal story, and in there it reported that Mary Mashinsky was okay with with the application of Rusty Rogers to develop the land, mine the sand, and build this warehouse. She was okay. Now, if she's okay with it, if she's okay with the project, that's it, game over.
Effectively, I would say.
Game
Doesn't
over.
mean there can't be pockets, like you said. There may be some pockets of resistance, but
yeah.
I would agree.
And what Mary Mashinsky, her position was a little strange. At first, she seemed to stir the pot.
Right.
She seemed to call out the troops and rile up a lot of environmentalists. And then, after riling them up and getting them to write letters, she says, "It's okay. I'm okay with the
Right.
project, with a proviso that Rusty Rogers work with the Department of Environmental Protection." I have no idea what that is, but if that allows people to save face, I'm good with it.
Well, didn't she also say that she's been involved with Rusty Rogers before?
Yeah,
I think she has.
Yeah, I mean,
I think she gave her blessing to him.
She gave his blessing.
And sometimes with environmentalists, there are developers that they've worked with. Sometimes the two sides work hand in hand, and that didn't completely surprise me.
Yeah, but why did she call out the troops to begin with? She knew Rusty Rogers was involved all along. She knew that way before we knew it.
You mean in that op-ed that she wrote?
Yeah. I don't know. There's something else here that is bothering me.
What is bothering you about this story?
Board of Ed.
Okay.
The Board of Ed
Yes.
is getting a study.
I spent some time on this one.
And, well, you've got me all riled up now.
Yeah,
about,
no.
About the budget and about rare
Well,
bugs.
that's good. That's good. It's good to get riled up.
Yeah. Just going back to the rare bugs for a minute.
Yeah.
I just got to say, I don't think there's a sufficient municipal interest in blocking this project on the basis of 25 acres of sand plain or bugs. If the state has an interest, let the state do it.
Right.
If the federal government has an interest, let the federal government do it. But the taxpayers of Wallingford shouldn't pay to save bugs or a strip of privately owned land that no one can visit. But so it's good that Planning and Zoning Commission is probably going to approve this. The state can do whatever it wants, and I think it's all going to go forward. But anyway, back to the Board of Ed.
Okay.
Record Journal story. The Board of Ed is seeking bids for a study looking at possible changes to the town's middle schools and high schools.
Right.
And here comes the jargon, the educational community jargon.
It was
The
tough.
consultant will be hired to complete a school capacity and restructuring study that will act as a roadmap for education advancement in the district in the coming years. It goes on to give some detail. They're seeking a school capacity plan.
Right.
If you want to learn how to write
Right.
and communicate clear, sharp, easily understandable ideas, don't read anything an educator puts out.
No,
They cannot make it simple.
No, and it's gotten worse.
And it's gotten worse.
It's gotten much worse.
Educational jargon is absolutely the worst. But it masks, it
Right.
obfuscates, the true path.
There's almost a 1984 quality. I'm probably going out on a limb here, but
I like that one. Yeah,
there's
go ahead.
almost a quality to the way education speak has evolved.
Okay.
And you're right, and it puts, it doesn't make our job any easier. Certainly, collectively, we could do a better job with it. That's not a comment.
But it's fun to mock it.
It is, and except that
It makes good
no,
programming.
it is. It
Yeah.
is fun to mock it, but
And
I think by bringing up 1984, there's also a scary side to this.
Okay.
To me, that we can't even understand what I really think boils down to a study to figure out, what buildings they want to keep and what they're going to do with those and who's going to be in those buildings. I don't know. I'm going on the fly here, but
I think this is a study so they can say when anyone ever asks them about the future of the school buildings,
Right.
it's a study so they can say, we have a study. And this
Oh.
study will lead to another study,
Okay.
which will lead to another study. And the first study will lead to meetings and focus groups
Okay.
but I don't take this with serious intent at all. I think this is a public relations coup by Dr. Menzo, who's a master at public relations. And I think this is a $60,000 public relations play, so he can say, well, we're studying that.
okay.
And these specs, in my view, were written not for a contractor,
right.
but for you.
Okay.
for the public.
Right.
You know, I mean, just listen to this. The Wallingford Public Schools, in partnership with families and the community, provide challenging
Yes.
educational opportunities in a caring, respectful, visionary environment that empowers all students to demonstrate high achievement and to lead meaningful lives in a diverse society. In addition, there is a special education elementary, middle school, school through high school alternative school and an alternative high school program, and so on and so forth. The district is faced with making academic progress in a very difficult economic environment. Now, these are bid specs. You know, it reads like a speech
Right.
that you would give.
And just to keep going with that,
I know.
if I may.
Yes,
Okay,
please.
because I'm with you on this. We're
Yeah,
actually at
yeah.
the same spot.
All right.
So the district is faced with making academic progress in a very difficult environment. While the Wallingford, a few sentences down.
Yeah.
While the Wallingford Public School District is making strides educationally, the town of Wallingford is experiencing the hardships of the economy.
The Board of Ed's $1.6 million surplus notwithstanding.
So
Go ahead.
it just makes it seem like they're like victim of these forces, like the rest of us are like dragging the school district down.
Let's hire a consultant.
Well, right. and you know, I have to give you, because you mentioned it first,
Yeah.
but the more I learn about this study, and this shows you how things get so obscured, including by me at times, but why can't this be done internally? Why do we need to hire somebody to do this study? I would think with the educational brain trust, I'm not mocking. I would say with the staff that Dr. Menzo has,
Right.
that he could do this study.
Then he's accountable for it. That's the problem.
Okay.
So you hire a consultant, you're not accountable for anything. And then you could say, well, we have a consultant and here's what he said, or we have a consultant, he's working on it, or we have the first phase and that consultant turned in his report, but in 2021 there'll be a second
Okay.
phase. I
No,
mean,
I should
think
have thought of that.
It's a never-ending process.
Is that
in my view.
especially if you're looking to maybe close buildings at some point or reuse buildings at some point? It would be better to have a consultant tell you that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
didn't. Yeah. Okay.
Nevertheless, Ralph, there's a strong desire to reinvigorate the educational opportunities for all students with a focus on integrating 21st century learning skills. This is for you. This is
Right.
for a press release
Right.
for the Record Journal. Did you bite? Let me look at this story. Did you bite on that? Did you print that? Did you repeat any of that?
The
Yeah, you
only thing
probably
I would
did.
say is that
You bid on it.
if it was meant as a press release, and I think you're right, this was a 43-page document.
Yeah.
It was hard. What you and I have drawn out of here is, a tiny bit.
Well, but the 43 pages was mostly boilerplate.
It was
wasn't
boilerplate.
It had nothing to do with reinvigorating the, and the vision and the. Yeah.
It also included quite a few pages, if people are interested, because I think they can find it, from the, oh God, you love this name, Reimagining Middle School and High School Study.
Oh boy. Okay.
And
Yeah.
that's a large portion of this too. So,
Yeah.
okay, go ahead.
Are we done?
Yeah, I think
We've been
we are
pretty rough on, but
fairly rough.
fairly rough.
Equally rough.
All right, let's call it a night.
Yes,
Let's make
absolutely.
that the final word. We have Joe Marone on the show next week.
Good.
Joe will give us his perspective. He had a lot to say. Joe Marone had a lot to say about the budget this time around. He's got some very interesting perspectives on it. After that, it's going to be Craig Fishbein, and we've held back on some of the controversial statements Craig has made and his role in this budget process. Craig Fishbein did raise some interesting points on ways that the budget could be modified. Many of them, not all of them, had substantial merit, but it never got an alliance, behind that. After that, we are scheduled to have a gubernatorial candidate, Democrat Jonathan Harris. He's a former mayor of West Hartford and was the former leader of the Consumer Protection Department. If he's still in it, I mean, the conventions are, coming up next weekend.
Soon, next week,
Yeah.
I think.
And then beginning of June, we're going to have Ned Lamont. He was supposed to be on this show, but he needed to reschedule, so he's going to be on June 6th, unless, and my guess, that the convention nominates him by acclamation, and maybe then he'll be too busy to come on the show. I don't know.
We'll see.
But that's the lineup. So we got a busy month, and then we take the summer off after that.
Right.
After June 6th. Thanks for tuning in to Citizen Mike Show. You got an earful tonight, but we do appreciate it. We're here Wednesdays. You can watch Citizen Mike Show Thursdays, Fridays, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesday on WPAA. Go to the WPAA website, WPAA.tv. In a couple days, it's up on YouTube. And go to the Citizen Mike Wallingford channel. Follow all the usual prompts. You can get the show on YouTube. Or if you let me know, I can send you an email with a link directly to the YouTube production, or to our production on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. Good night, everybody.